But I think for some of your creators, like Mr. Beast, that have more content, you could imagine some micro clips or scenarios that are automatically created, and they're going through your AI, and they're trying to test different combinations of created content or scripts that they think could fire. So imagine your creators actually having potential script ideas coming down, and then they are deciding what they're going to execute on. So right now they're stuck in their own heads trying to decide what to execute on.
So this is stuff that we're already working on, believe it or not.
This is Creative Disruption, the intersection where entertainment, data, and creativity meet. Here's your host, Ricky Ray Butler.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Creative Disruption. I'm Ricky Ray Butler, and I'm really excited about today's episode. We have Ben Taylor, who's a really good friend of mine, and he's also one of the most influential data scientist creators out there, specifically around data science executives, where he has around 50,000 followers. Very niche, but something that's really making a huge impact in the world today, especially when it comes to all this content and understanding how to look at all of it at scale. Ben and I have actually been friends for a really long time, and he's not only someone that creates great content and is a thought leader when it comes to data science and AI, but he's also been very successful as an entrepreneur where he started a company called Zeph, which he then sold to DataRobot and is currently the chief AI evangelist. Did I miss anything, Ben?
No, I don't think you missed anything. We can pull in some threads, but thanks for the opportunity. I'm really excited to. The funny thing about this, Ricky, before I jumped on, is you and I have kind of crossed each other with our careers, right? So I started very technical, chemical engineering, Intel Micron hedge fund. I work in marketing.
Yeah.
You started with a marketing background,
Yeah.
right? And now you are very much centered in AI and deep tech. So the truth's in the middle somewhere, right?
I guess it says something. I think, I'm probably a lot more intelligent and smart than you because I'm going down the right path. I mean, going to marketing, why in the world would you prioritize marketing so much?
Well, it's funny. You remind me, Ricky, if I was born dumber than you, I would still be smarter than you because I would work so hard. Actually, intelligence is a fun conversation because intelligence is a function of experience in capturing knowledge and then applying that into future decisions. So there, obviously, some people do have genetic predispositions to be more intelligent. Maybe Elon Musk or someone had something like that. But there's some truth to hard work and experience capture. That's actually why I like founders, because founders are faced with unique experiences. You can't go to college to understand what to do when you get an email with a lawyer where they're suing you.
Sure.
Or
I love
these are
your
scenarios.
Scientific response to my sarcasm.
Yeah. So you saying you're smarter than me, and I have to try to defend,
deconstruct it, use some points of logic.
I know. I need glasses where I could push them up and say, actually, according to my calculations, Anyway, I love the intersection that we're in between the creative side and intuition, what works, what gets traction, but also understanding AI and how that's teaching us to understand ourselves. And there's definitely overlap here, and I think you guys are doing a lot of work in this space to understand what is intuition. And have you had people that have doubted and said that you can't predict this? Like that this is magic, that you can't... Is there an art theme here that you can't get traction?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think AI in a lot of ways, and deep learning and computer vision, and ways of looking at unstructured data, behind the creative, whether it's audio, visual, video, or large groups of texts, the stuff that doesn't fit in the spreadsheet. It's interesting. I believe that there's a new set of talents that come to the table where I think sometimes engineers try to oversimplify what data science or what AI is doing. And then you have, data experts and analysts that try to oversimplify how the technology works. And the truth is, when it comes to AI, you got to have that, really healthy balance of understanding both data, but also technology and math, to really, look at things differently and to have, machines be as effective, if not more effective than humans. And so I think it's one of those things where it sounds too good to be true, but the truth is, AI is like electricity. It's already benefiting all of our lives. Whether it's in our Apple device or or if it's autonomous driving. I mean, there's already things where AI is really benefiting humans, and it's really optimizing us to be a lot more effective and a lot more efficient. But Ben, let's talk a little more about you and your background. You're very accomplished. You've collaborated before and after working at DataRobot with Intel, NVIDIA, HP. You've worked with a lot of different brands, and I believe, have you worked in a little bit also with SpaceX? I mean, if you could expound upon some of your career accomplishments.
Yeah, so I started working at Intel and Micron. This is applied semiconductor, and then I got an opportunity to go work at a hedge fund, and I think that's what gave me my foundation in data science. Because if you're a data scientist, and if someone comes in the room and says that they're a quant, and by quant I mean not like the business analyst quant. I mean if you tell a data scientist that you're a hardcore quant, they will immediately see you as a peer. I would even argue they might see you as something else. They might see you as because building predictive models in finance, you can get value tomorrow. So why don't you get value tomorrow? When it comes to delivering value, it's one of the fastest turnaround points, and that's why you have quants that make so much money, because they can do some clever AI and machine learning. So for me, that was the fire hose. That was where I got my foundation. And then I joined a Sequoia Capital company called HireVue. I was their chief data scientist. I built out their team. And then I co-founded Zeph, like you mentioned. And so along this way, this feels more like a technical background. But I fell in love with storytelling, and I didn't know that was happening. So I started speaking, started doing keynotes, and my keynotes were quite different than anything else that people were seeing in the AI community. Because you go to a data science conference, and this will sound pretty critical, but I think it's a fair criticism. Most of the talks, they're forgettable. They all blend together. There's nothing you're going to go home and tell your loved one. There's nothing you're going to go home and tell your family. You'll never guess what I saw at this conference today. You do see those talks. Those talks are there, but those are the talks that make a difference. So I was giving those types of talks, and this gets more into the creative. So what was I doing with AI that was making jaws fall open, and people began to invite me, like SpaceX invited me to come out, Red Bull, these different companies, the U.S. government, they've invited me to come out and present on AI because they see examples that shock them. And so I think kind of the core of it is being selfish. You need to be selfish on your content. You need to find something that you selfishly think is the coolest thing you've ever thought of, and then go do it. And so I'm a big fan of doability. If something's impossible or if doability is in the way, that's never hesitation for me.
Yeah.
So if I think I can go do something, I will obsess about it until I accomplish it. And that's led to some of these milestone talks that have made some waves in the AI community.
Wow. No, that's amazing. And so let's tie it back to entertainment and video. We're seeing this new revolution of decentralized content. There's more content and more content creators than ever before. I believe there's 50 million people that consider themselves content creators and influencers. And then you have thousands of Hollywoods when it used to be in one central place. And you have Netflix, which is bigger than the top 5 cable networks combined. But then you have which is non-ad supported. But then you also have on YouTube and Instagram or TikTok, where the majority of the views are coming from content creators, which is really hard for us humans to really compute or understand of all the content that is out there and what that means to us. As a business. And running an AI company in entertainment, we were forced to evolve because there was way too much content to monitor. And so we needed, AI technology and algorithms to help monitor that was out there, but also to contextualize what's happening in that content to know what we need to prioritize. And so right now we're experiencing the era of the artist. It's beautiful. There's more art and more content and more self-expression that's relevant to a much more diverse group. It's way more inclusive, and everyone can find their niche or whatever resonates with them. and content is on the rise. I mean, even after quarantine and everything's still going up, both with more traditional entertainment as well as with these digital content creators. What do you think is the future of entertainment, and how is AI going to be a part of it?
I love this question. I was hoping you'd bring it to this point, because there's something profound where they're perfectly paired up, because AI, it actually becomes a human will get trapped in a process at work. So I'm not talking about you guys are very lucky working in creative space, but I would argue you have humans before that were trapped working a process. So think of like an underwriter for an insurance company, or you're a technician doing quality review. You're not using your creative thinking. You are a cog in a wheel. And with AI bringing automation, you're going to have a lot more humans that are able to escape the process. So I see AI as a creative maximizer for everyone. And so I think you're going to have more humans that are able to produce more creative content. It's going to take less work. And so there's so many different avenues where this is being accelerated, because I would argue on the content creation, some of the early content creators spent how many hours producing their content, right? Like if you really knew how much time they put into their content, which I'm sure you do, it's soul crushing, especially when you're getting started. Like you spend many, many hours just editing that content. And so the faster we can do that, right? The faster you can push content, but also what are you doing during your day job, and are you able to have more creative time? The other thing you reminded me of, I think it's important to call out that most executives fail at what you're doing. 85% of companies fail with their AI initiatives. They don't pay for themselves. They don't offer a competitive edge. And I think something that you guys did really, really well, I like to tell executives, there's some simple questions to ask. Where's your growth bottlenecked? Where's your growth bottlenecked by human capital? If I could gift you 1,000 employees tomorrow, they're experts. What do you want them to be, and where are you going to put them? They're free. You don't have to pay for them for a year. And these, if you have a number in your business, if you can make a very small change that would make you happy from an impact perspective, what are those numbers? And so those questions make you focus. I think where you guys started focusing early on, where you quickly found some transformative levers to pull on, where you then spill over into this greenfield space where competitors aren't playing there because humans can't play there, because it would require thousands of humans. And it would break every business model if you actually had humans that were doing some of the stuff.
That's a good point. AI definitely empowers individuals and businesses to be relieved and to escape the tedious details. And for you referenced our business where we use AI to work with creators, both helping them grow their audiences and growing their revenues, but also helping brands navigate all these tens of millions of pieces of content that are being uploaded every day, and how to be successful. And so, before, an individual could probably work with 300 to 400 different creators a month. Our goal is to make it so we can make it so it's not just the top 2% of creators that are making money, but where we can expand that middle class of creators. And we want to make it so one individual can eventually work with 1,000 creators a month, which I think we're already actually close to that, but to 10,000 or 20,000 or 100,000. I mean, literally there's 50 million creators, and we work with tens of thousands of them every year, but we're not even close to working with millions of them every year. There's just not enough, brands that have evolved, to really benefit from all the inventory that is out there. But, you have to, get really good at comparing apples to apples to other forms of media, but also, being able to be predictive, and us being able to, predict, native, views from creators, to be able to predict clicks, or in some cases, if we train the algorithm, well enough, conversions, and which we do that for a variety of brands that work with creators, where every month we guarantee them revenue on what they're going to get as a response of working with certain creators. That has been game changing, where we've been able to hire 170 people this year to date, and the reason why is because We have AI powered applications and technology that really makes it so we can hire people that maybe don't have a lot of experience in the space, but they can still be very effective in running brand campaigns because of all the things where the AI is helping them save time. And it's usually all those like tedious details that, it used to take someone, hours to go through a list of 50 creators and try to crack the numbers to figure out like what we can expect to see as an outcome when it comes to viewership. And many of the times it was wrong. Right now, our AI is 25% more effective than humans in predicting views. And just to give, the listeners context, it's a really big deal if, the AI is like 10% less effective than humans. I mean, that right there is you're already into a space of scale. If they match what humans do, that's even better. But the fact that, with all this content and with all the data that is out there where the AI is able to, be 25% more effective, that's game changing. It's never happened, in the world of entertainment or advertising. On TV, our AI has been able to predict 8 out of the top 10 pilots on linear television for the last 3 years, been able to do more than that. And that's also an area where there hasn't been a lot of investments when it comes to predictive analytics, and we've been very fortunate to do that. Now, you bring up like creators. How can AI help people that are editing and creating content to be less burned out and less exhausted? Because you hear this from all the top creators that at one point or another they get burnt out or they need a break. Some people have quit, creating content because they're tired of the burnout. Where do you think AI is going to be helpful to content creators creating content?
There's some quick wins, and I'm sure there's companies out there that are already playing in this space. So video is complicated, but to simplify it, if we talked about photos just as an analogy or to proxy briefly, to have an AI system that automatically ranks photos based on the likelihood of them being selected. So think of like whether or not you're smiling, but even something like your relative attractiveness relative to yourself. Are you the most attractive in this photo compared to something where it's off? Like we've all had photos taken of ourselves where you think, I don't like this photo. I think it's not a Christmas card worthy photo. That is so easy for AI today to go through, stack rank, and as long as you have the training set. So now getting into the video component, the experience is king. So who is going to have the most experience with editing and taking videos out? So even with this podcast, I don't think we've said anything inappropriate or anything that has to be edited out, but I've got a podcast too, and we have to do a lot of editing. So as you build up that experience, you could imagine AI automatically editing your content in the style that you want, or AI should be really good at anticipating what you need. So we are moving into a future where AI in the future, 5, 10, 20 years from now, it will live to please you. And what I mean by that is imagine you wake up in the morning, you're drinking coffee, you're having a conversation in your home, you want to know what it did last night, because you gave it some tasks. You gave it some verbal tasks to go and conquer and do these things, and it is obsessed with pleasing you. And if it got stuck, you can have a conversation with it. So now getting back to the creator side, if AI is working hard to automatically edit your video, if you have some feedback, you say, I don't like how you did this, I don't like how you do that, we're going to reach a point where you can have a conversation with AI like you would with junior talent. So you have very senior talent, that'll take longer. But with junior talent, I think you could have a natural conversation. So the creator, it's an iteration, right? The wins will be small, but they will start to speed up. And I think 10 to 20 years from now, it's really hard for me to imagine someone doing all of these edits.
Yeah. Like
you might do in Final Cut Pro or
where you can just, verbally give direction to, the AI or, the algorithms and say, hey, this is how I want things edited, and I want this emotion to come across. I want to make sure that, it's very engaging. And then there could be a rough draft and then eventually a final draft that's created just based on verbal cues to tech.
Yeah. And I think we're seeing some of this on, have you noticed the iPhone now will automatically put together videos for memories? So based on geolocation
and it's
or
impressive.
date, they will. Yeah, like it's fun to watch, and you didn't have to do it. You didn't, you and I are busy, and I think that's just going to get better and better. And so we're talking about the creator side here, but a big part of this will enable memory capture, because we have work, but we also have family and reasons that we enjoy living on. Traveling, I was in Orlando yesterday, going to Animal Kingdom and different things with kids. And these experiences, the human memory fades. You will not be able to remember your trip to Cancun 5 years ago. 10 years ago, forget it. You can't remember it. But maybe you can remember. I think you have a better memory than I do. But with digital capture, being able to videotape everything we do, 360 video, being able to like automatically edit it out, you will be able to go back and visit any memory in your life that was meaningful to you, and I think that'll be a blessing, because you can and you've seen some of my snowboarding backcountry content. So I produce a lot of very aggressive backcountry ski content, and I post it on LinkedIn, which is hilarious, because that content wouldn't normally be on LinkedIn, but it scares the hell out of people that see it in San Francisco and DC.
I'm convinced, other than you being good at storytelling and making good content, I think one of the reasons why you have the amount of followers you have that are, which is a good amount. I mean, 50,000 is a lot in the AI world. I wonder it's because you are a former amateur professional snowboarder making very cool, aggressive content. I don't think that is something that happens a lot in the data science world or with AI experts. And so I think you're kind of that individual that's a little edgy, talking data. Would you agree with that, or am I marginalizing everything that you do?
No, I agree with that. It's actually funny because by me posting video content where people are convinced I'm trying to die. So I will get comments where people will criticize me and say, "Do you have kids?" Because I'll have a video of me walking on a cornice and there's a 3,000-foot drop. And so people that watch this video content, they have anxiety because what if I fall? And the funny thing is novelty seeking is a behavior of intelligent animals. So humans, we seek novelty. If you and I were happy in Hawaii and there's a scary mountain, eventually some idiot human would climb over the mountain and die trying to see what's on the other side, because we hunt for novelty. So the funny thing here, the theme I'm trying to get to, is being an adrenaline junkie and showing content where you are risking death. I think there's a theme there where some people, I'm not saying this makes you smarter, because I think it's kind of dumb, but there is a theme there where I think some people perceive that as courageousness or intelligence, confidence.
Well, that's interesting. I think I see where you're going with this. If you're adventurous and courageous, there's a good chance that you're going to be a part of an anomaly that can then help change society and improve society to model after it and to be able to do it more consistently. And as a result, I guess in some ways or another, elevate the human race or the human experience.
Yeah, it comes back to legacy and being founders. I had a great conversation in Vegas last week with an investor, and I was kind of chuckling about the reality distortion of founders, because every new founder thinks they've got the next Facebook. They think they're going to take over the world. I was kind of poking fun of that, and he was commenting about, I think you need that. Like, as a new founder, you actually have to be that crazy that you think that could happen. And you and I would say, well, it's not a rational. So this gets into this concept of emotions versus emotional behavior versus rational behavior. Some of the most exciting things that humans do, it's on the emotional side. You're doing a startup is not a rational thing that you should do. Most startups fail. And you having gone through that, you and I would not recommend that as like a fun thing to do. You've got the pit in your stomach, soul crushing. You have hard days, and then you have family and friends that tell you to quit.
Yeah. Being a CEO of a much bigger company is way easier for me than going and starting a new business.
Well, and I think a big part of that too is you can attract the talent and the experience to surround you, so you're not in a panic about payroll 2 weeks from now, having a bigger company, and that's true of DataRobot. We are one of the larger AI companies now, which is really exciting as we continue to grow. But it's also nice that payroll will be paid. I don't need to worry about. Yeah, not having to pay payroll is definitely a nice break.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. It's interesting, like where DataRobot is and where like Ben Group is, because DataRobot, you work across a variety of industries, government, et cetera, when it comes to like AI solutions. we're very niche to entertainment. And, I think we're a similar size business, but we focus on helping content creators be more data driven and saving time, which helps them grow their audience, but also helping them, grow their revenue, and also to help inspire them to keep creating content. That's one thing that we do with the TubeBuddy side, but we also try to bring them brand deals and try to be doing that at scale. And then we also, own the biggest, product placement company in the world that is in 95% of most of the SVOD platforms. But like, there's just so much data here where like it's hard for us to see how do we expand outside of entertainment, because there's just so much to do here with tens of millions of videos that are out there to learn from, and which is data. And with DataRobot, you have a different challenge, is because, as you connect with new partners and new clients, you have to start from the ground up on helping them be very successful, or how to better manage their data. To talk more about that, like what are the challenges and what are the things that are exciting about what you're doing?
Yeah, and I'm smiling when you ask this, because there's so many emotions that go into the background behind this. So AI has matured in the messaging, and I would like to say that DataRobot's much further. Like, you made the distinction that we definitely are a generalist company. We're in every industry. We have a lot of experience. But when we started out, if you go back in time and look at some of our messaging, it's a little cringy. And it's not because we're doing anything wrong. It's because we were naive. We have a platform. Imagine what you could do. Like, I'd lean into you and say, Ricky, you really need to buy the DataRobot platform, because imagine what you could do this year. And the funny thing with that conversation is, where's the value? Where's my commitment to you on value? It's not even there. And it throws it all on you. And so as DataRobot's matured, I think they are really good at doing proof of value out of the gate. So they'll do a 30-day proof of value, something that you like because you say, awesome, it's a win. And this gets into pricing, right? So with my startup, with pricing, I was always anxious to hit people with pricing. I felt uncomfortable. And if I feel uncomfortable, the answer is really simple. The only reason you would feel uncomfortable with pricing is you're not confident that I'm going to get a return on that price. But if I come to you and say, hey, Ricky, DataRobot's $5 million a year, you wouldn't care if the value was there. If the value's there and if it's a healthy multiplier, you don't care what the price is. But if you don't know if the value's there, it's a very different conversation. So DataRobot has really led with value first, and I think that's something the data science community has lacked.
Yeah.
They're kind of this academic playland. And some people will get these executive data science positions where they'll have runway. They'll have 3 to 5 years of runway to do something. So they actually don't have to show attribution for a couple of years, which is crazy because you have to show attribution every quarter. These people coming into like deep R&D, like imagine if you hire me and you essentially tell me, 2 years, you wouldn't do this, but other people do this. 2 years, you don't need to show any attribution. Just build the foundation, build out the R&D team. But that's where the failures happen. And that's the other thing I like about startups is they bring urgency. So you have that tension between strategic thinking and urgency, and you need both. You need the tug and pull.
Well, if you run the business the right way, that if you want it to become a high growth business, is you need to embrace failure. You want to fail,
and you need to fail quickly.
You need to fail as fast as possible. And I think the majority of our listeners on this podcast are content creators. From TikTok to YouTube, and also executives from Hollywood. We have a very unique audience on this podcast, and I think that's something that some creators are very nervous about, but also the ones that are really good and very data driven, they celebrate. They learn what's winning, what's working, and what's not working, and it's interesting, our AI tries to contextualize to make our lives easier of like, okay, what's happening on a creator's channel. And, there's some creators, like, for example, Mr. Beast, who has, and I don't know if he even knows this, but there's literally probably 50 different series on his channel. And so our team, when we look at that channel, we try to look at, okay, based on what a brand wants to accomplish, what series is going to have the most impact for what the brand is going to, to see when it comes to success, whether it's viewership or conversions, et cetera. And we can like go a layer deeper to, better, contextualize what's happening with the content to make either a client or a creator to be, more successful. And so it's one of those, areas where, in order to be a creator and to grow content, failing fast is also really important, and to like look at feedback and to be as data driven as possible. But you see where the wins are, where the failures are, and then from there you can optimize. And I get really excited. When we acquired TubeBuddy, we were very excited to help empower the creator economy. And the reason why we did it, I'll tell you a story. Actually, there's a creator that we've had on the podcast named Preston Plays. Preston's a gamer. He also does a lot of challenge videos, really good content, really nice guy out of Texas. And I was speaking at Vid Summit a couple of years ago and showing all the wins that we've had with AI and what we're doing with brands, et cetera, and how it's through creators and through entertainment, it's going to change advertising. And, Preston, got up and asked a question and put me on the spot. And he said, it's great what you're doing with all this data for brands, but what are you doing for creators? And it put me in the spot where I was like, oh, shoot, like, that's a complicated question. And the truth is there's so much data out there to be able to help creators to be a lot more accurate and a lot more effective in them being able to predict their own viewership or their revenues or, their click-through rates or subscribers. And we found TubeBuddy, and the goal was to literally, help take this amazing platform that has helped over 8 million creators to be even more accurate and more effective. And after we had like two weeks of our AI team just working on the TubeBuddy products, we were able to improve, and this hasn't gone live yet, but we were able to improve our keyword search, which is probably next to our A/B testing, the most popular feature. We were able to improve that. Just looking at the data just a little differently, we were able to improve the keyword search by 30%, and that was a result of being able to look at things and figure out, okay, this is something that's already working. How can we make it even more effective, more impactful? And I think this is what's it's going to raise the bar. I think not just for creators, but across all industries. Of we're used to this, and it's working really well, but how can we even elevate more? And understanding failure and embracing failure is one way, but others is how you look at data. And so let's talk a little bit about data, and let's maybe give some. I'd love you to give some advice to creators around data. So, we talk a lot, in the AI world about structured and unstructured data. Could you define both, for the audience, and then let's talk about how important it is to know and have the context around this data.
I think the easiest lay explanation for structured versus unstructured data is if your audience is familiar with Excel or a database where you have rows and columns, that's structured. Most data can go into that. And a lot of the data, I'd say, I forget the numbers, you might know more than I do. It's like 90% of data is structured. You have a lot of transaction data. But that's changing where you now have unstructured data that's starting to blow over because you've got YouTube and all this stuff that's growing very quickly. And so we're kind of flipping this. Unstructured data is stuff like images, text, geolocation data. Like it just doesn't fit nicely in a database. And one of the things I heard once, I can't remember who said it, but maybe this is common sense. Unstructured data is data that's waiting to be structured. So you can name any unstructured data type, a video, images. I can actually represent that as a structured. I can structure it. And for this is getting very technical, and we don't have to go technical, but I can essentially take anything and convert it into a format that I can shove into Excel, and the computer's actually digested it down into the fundamental building blocks. And so one of the things we push at DataRobot is this idea of multimodality model building, where we have different data types coming together, which is more fair because that's what you do as a human. So if you're in healthcare, and if you're looking at an image and trying to decide cancer, not cancer, a doctor would use the patient history. They'd use all the other information in addition to the image to make that determination. And so we see this AI. There's two camps of AI. You have experimental AI, and then you have applied. They're very different. And I like to, the more I could lean in and make fun of people in experimental, because experimental would say cancer detection, true or false. Applied would say, let's bring in all the subject matter experts. There might be more than one. It would be the clinician, the people that understand insurance billing codes, and let's bring in all the data that matters, and let's actually do something that makes an impact. So that's the applied camp. They think about problems very differently than the experimental camp. The experimental camp, they have horse blinders on. They're navel gazing.
Yeah.
I think I ran away from your question.
Yeah. You went pretty deep. Well,
Oh,
we
man.
call experimental and applied. What we call internally is research, AI research, and then the applied team. And both sides need to innovate. Both sides need to be very inventive. Applied is like taking something that works and like making it scale and work even better, and making sure that over time it gets more and more effective. With research, how we look at research is we literally have someone that's like a postgrad neuroscientist, deep learning expert that is trying to recreate brains digitally and figure out, okay, how can we better understand the contents or the context of the video from a post-analysis perspective. And we've had a lot of breakthroughs in doing that, because sometimes AI can predict, and sometimes there's a black box where it's really hard to know why it's predicting a certain way. And because it's looking at data in a way that humans just can't comprehend. If you look at this pen, you're going to describe this pen in maybe 12, 15 different ways. The AI can look at this pen and describe it in 10 million different ways, and then can analyze videos with other pens. They can determine if this pen is a cheap pen or an expensive pen, or how it sounds when you hit it against a microphone, or how easy it is to break, etc. It's going to look at an object, let's say in video content, and be able to recognize that better than a human could ever, and then also understand, okay, what's the impact of that object in the content. And so when you come to doing brand integrations, or trying to be more helpful for creators to be more effective on how their videos can improve, understanding that context is very important. But there isn't a lot of companies or organizations that have really done something that has helped creators, especially have something that's very scalable to help there. And so that's one of those things that we're having our research team do where they're experimenting and like inventing, not AI, but they're inventing new types of algorithms and figuring out how to make algorithms train faster, how to be much more effective in making predictions, in order to just level up the industry and make it so we can take a lot more guesswork out of it. And so when I see like experimental or research versus applied is, okay, it's been proven. Like let's make this thing like just explode in growth. And with research, you kind of have to go and invent things and figure out, okay, there is not a solution to these problems over here. So let's try to create a neural network that's going to make it so we can look at the data better, and then get a better idea of what outcomes can come as a result of it, that we can then hand over to the applied team once we've been able to test it out.
Yeah, I think maybe I'll carve out a portion of the experimental group, because there is a group. I'm not saying this group exists in your company, but there is a group of experimental AI researchers that I want to be very critical of, and they're I'll give you here's a clear example. So elderly slip and fall. You and I have grandparents. We've had grandparents. My grandma fell and broke her hip in her home. She was old. This will happen. And so if I'm going to build an AI system to detect elderly slip and fall, there are people in the AI experimental community that will say, great, I'll put a few cameras in the home. I see you fall. I tell someone you fell. And for that AI researcher, I would say, you guys are idiots. Because you're not taking the big approach. You're not actually solving the problem, because a smarter way is to say, I'm going to have 7 cameras in your home, and I'm going to do anomaly detection. What if you go to the bathroom for 4 hours? I have a problem with that. What if you don't get out of bed in the morning? I have a problem with that. What if you don't show up for breakfast? I have a problem with that. So I quickly came up with a list of outcomes that the first AI researchers weren't prepared to handle, because they're kind of stuck. So I guess when it comes to AI research, I always want people to involve the subject matter experts, think of all the data that matters, and take a very wide approach, but also be very critical. Like pretend like you and I were having a competition. If I tell you what I'm doing, can you come and bite my head off? Or can I bite your head off? And that's a good way to kind of fail before we start. Because let's not go build a camera system in an elderly home if it's going to fail because you fell around the corner. But yeah, I want to get it back to the creative, because I did want to compliment you and say, if I put my CMO hat on, there's this interesting transformation happening in the industry where classical marketing, I will go and bet on Formula One. I'll take like my marketing budget, make a massive bet. If it doesn't hit, that's a lot of risk for me, where you're talking about I can make a bet that is now distributed across tens, hundreds, or even thousands of influencers. I see that as just like a stock portfolio. I'm now mitigating my risk, right? I'm not going to have this Formula One goose egg if it doesn't hit. Is that something that is true?
I think it goes full circle. Sometimes I think overcomplicate like what AI is and how it's going to be helpful. And there's some people that are really nervous about singularity or AGI coming out and like taking over the human race, and robots are going to reign the earth, or there's a lot of conspiracy theories, et cetera, around that. But it's just AI is really just a way of looking at data more effectively, and be able to look at it in a way where it could help us predict what's going to happen and help us predict like the future. And one thing with I think in creating content or in advertising or marketing in general, there's always been data, but people have only looked at the structured data, and there's a problem with that. And the reason why that's a problem, and this is both, I think, creators and brands. The problem is structured data is, 10 to 20% of all the data that's out there. And especially in this world of entertainment and with content, I would probably say 90% of the, data is probably unstructured. And so when I referenced earlier that, we've had algorithms that have been very good at helping predict clicks or helping to predict conversions. Guess what data is helping us the most?
The
unstructured. And the reason why we've been able to have these wins that have had these huge breakthroughs is because we looked at 100% of the entire picture, not just 10 to 20% of it. And it's interesting when it comes to predicting literally like how many clicks a creator is going to get or how many conversions a group of creators are going to get. The most important feature in the unstructured is actually audio, which says a lot. And so, our goal is to empower artists to create art, and to also make it so more brands, give resources to creators to be empowered to make more art, and also for creators to take out more guesswork and be much more data driven. And what we're trying to bring to the table is saying, is basically saying, look, there's all this content, and it's confusing because it's so decentralized. And it's also complicated for marketers because 90% of the globe is trying to skip ads, and so understanding the content and being inside the content is more important now than ever before. And it's more important now with all these content creators these creators and influencers and movie producers, to be a lot more data driven. And so what we're trying to do to really bring to the table to the creator economy and to all the content creators out there is we want them to be able to have the tools in place to look at all of the data. So they're not just looking at the Excel spreadsheet and looking at their average views or just looking at clicks or little engagements, but where they have a technology that can look at and analyze, content in a tens of millions of ways rather than just from a human's brain and two eyeballs and trying to capture context from that. We try to get a machine to do that, where a machine can learn like a human but can scale like technology. And so when it comes to like all the wins that we've had, I can simplify that it's because we've been able to invest in the infrastructure and in the technology to analyze unstructured data, to be able to analyze video, and to be able to be better at predicting outcomes of how well that video is going to do. And I mentioned that the AI is already 25% more effective than humans in predicting views. Well, it's 11% more effective than humans in predicting clicks. And so this is something where we feel like there's a lot of opportunity here, not just to help brands empower creators to create more content, but for creators to be a lot more scientific and to save time when they're creating content, so that content can be more effective and can be better analyzed by looking at all the data rather than just a small percentage of it.
Yeah. So unstructured data is interesting because you hit that scaling issue that you brought up. Like a human has to literally watch that content, and that adds up to many hours, where AI can go through much faster, and you can scale. You can fire that up on the cloud, multiple nodes. The other interesting thing is humans actually have a hard time unpacking intuition. And sometimes their intuition sucks. It's a dart on the board. It's guesswork. So one of my favorite plots is looking at podcast episode drop off. So you have killer episodes, there's no drop off. You have your weaker episodes, and you see a drop off point. If you just show me that and you say, Ben, why was there drop off here? I could try to make up some story. I can try to back into the facts and argue why I think that happened. I actually don't really know. Like, it's intuition. But if you bring in AI, and if you have enough data, you can actually AI can begin to tell a story that I was unable to tell. So I think intuition unpacking is very useful for creators, because they might not know why an episode, one of their, some of their content did well, and another one didn't. And you have
that's a very bold theory, but I think I agree with it. Like, unpacking intuition. There's sometimes as humans where we get this gut feel that if we do it this way, it's going to be effective. And I think that happens a lot in the creative, process, where, we usually celebrate that people are just very naturally creative and that they can, make good content that performs. But the truth is, whether it's subconscious or, but they're just better probably at data gathering in a different way. And maybe when it comes to creative and when it comes to unstructured, data, they can analyze and better, pick up correlations or causations of what could make a video better or an image better. And I would agree with you on this, where I think AI is really, the missing element in technology to help us, better understand that gut check, or like, or those, intuitive, feelings of like what's going to work and what's not going to work. But AI can actually bring math and science to the table, and make a much better argument than I think humans ever could.
Yeah. I completely agree. I did have a thought while you were talking that I'm going to try to coin a new term that maybe it won't even make sense or work. But there's this concept of intelligent design. So intelligent design is this exciting thing where you go get an MRI scan. The antenna in that machine was not designed by a human. It was designed by a computer, where they did many iterations to produce an antenna that had the maximum performance. And so now imagine this new concept that will emerge over time, called this intelligent creative, where an AI is actually producing creative content that never happened. So just like people listening to the show might not know that AI can produce faces and even video sequences of people that don't exist. And I think that you can search a website like peoplethatdon'texist.com. I don't know the domain, but you can see some of these fake faces. They're unbelievable. They will trick anyone. But I think for some of your creators like Mr. Beast that have more content, you could imagine some micro clips or scenarios that are automatically created, and they're going through your AI, and they're trying to test different combinations of creative content. or scripts that they think could fire. So imagine your creators actually having potential script ideas coming down, and then they are deciding what they're going to execute on. So right now they're stuck in their own heads trying to decide what to execute on.
So this is stuff that we're already working on, believe it or not.
Oh, okay. That's
and
awesome.
you know, and you know, I think this is also, you know, areas where like GPT-3, you know, from OpenAI is going to be extremely helpful. You know, and be able to communicate, to help better, AI and humans better communicate, whether it's, scripts or titles, etc. But that's very interesting. Let's get a little futuristic here, and as we get close to wrapping up. Did you ever watch? I believe it's a movie on Netflix called Bandersnatch.
Is it part of the Black Mirror series?
Well, it's not part of the series, but it's the same filmmakers where you use your control and like you do a choose your own adventure. So you choose what cereal they eat. You choose what direction you feel the content should go. Did you ever watch that?
No, I didn't.
So I get really excited about the future because I think that choose your own adventure, or which is very similar and kind of copycatted early YouTube days of choose your own adventure annotations, like where YouTubers would create choose your own adventures where you could click on a certain area and decide what direction or scenario that you wanted the creator to create. Well, yeah. This is scary, but I hope this ends up happening, and I think it will go in this direction. Imagine if you're watching content and the AI is able to change what's happening in that content based on how you're emotionally reacting. Mm-hmm. So if you're laughing at a certain part, it optimizes the rest of the video to make you continually laugh, if that's what you want to get out of it. Or if you want to get scared, the AI can have a bunch of different scenarios that could be scary based on what your preferences of being scared are. Do you think we're going in that realm of entertainment where AI will be able to look at our bio data and predict how we are going to react to the content?
I think so. I actually posted about this a couple years ago on Halloween, because the really dark portion of this is, imagine I go downstairs to my basement. I've got this entertainment system, and I put on this VR headset, or I'm just looking at the TV. And if it's using real-time feedback, maybe there's a thermal camera, or it's got some skin, it's trying to detect if I'm sweating, and it's monitoring my heart. If you have arachnophobia, if you have different fears that cause you anxiety, AI will find that out quickly. And the scary thing here is if it's not just giving you prefabricated content, if it actually is allowed to produce anything. So we talked about GANs, generative adversarial networks. If it is able to do completely new, innovative horror, where it can innovate on monsters or scenarios, you could actually cross into a Black Mirror territory where you come over to my house, you go downstairs, you put this on, you come up an hour later, and you are different. So you could actually have a psychotic break. Because think of we have these fears that are irrational, like arachnophobia, or what's that one with if there's too many holes in something, it gives humans feel uncomfortable. So some of these fears could actually just hit your brain in a way where now you need to go do PTSD therapy to fix what you just
did. That got dark really fast.
Yeah.
I was talking about entertainment, and you just took it to a whole other level. Goodness gracious, Ben. Well, it's interesting because this is all really important stuff, and where we have to be, very careful and make sure that there's the right checks and balances and systems in place. Because when it comes to entertainment, or when it comes to video, or experiential, it can be used. AI could be used in a way that it can be somewhat toxic, especially when it comes to propaganda. Making sure, we talk about Cambridge Analytica and all the issues that, happen with that company. I think that's just a tip of the iceberg of things that could happen, especially if, people with AI got better and better, at manipulating, and it could be, a toxic engine for propaganda.
And maybe this is a question for you that kind of puts you on the hot seat. As your algorithms get better and better at predicting attention, could you potentially add fuel to that fire where 20, 40, 50 years from now, is there going to be this scenario where algorithms are so good that the moment I get off this call, I will now be... So think of like TikTok on steroids. Like TikTok, maybe this is already happening. Like TikTok is so good at sending people
so
content,
good at discovery.
They'll just... they'll sit there for hours. And if we're at tip of the iceberg, where 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, you are so good at earning my attention from an algorithm perspective that I'm helpless to not give it to you.
I think, with some of the major platforms, this is sort of starting to happen. And that's why you have these rabbit holes of misinformation. And it's much harder today than ever before, to determine if data is bad data or good data. And, so I think, you can look at all the doomsday scenarios about like, how this could be dangerous. But, I think the benefit is you can, have AI structure to help balance it. And so, right now there's a misinformation issue where, you have a crazy uncle or aunt posting weird things on Facebook that are just not true. And they try to do their own research, and they are consumed with this idea, and they feel like they've seen enough data points to be convinced that it's true. And so I think there are going to be tools in place to really help, mitigate that type of risk where people that really do want to know the truth, will have tools in place to help, validate if what they're reading is truly data driven or is, truly happened, et cetera. I'd say one way that I would compare with this is, I don't know if you know this, but there's $1.3 billion being spent every year in the influencer space or creator space on fraudulent activity on behalf of brands. And what that means is brands are working with creators that sometimes have a majority of like fake followers or a high percentage of engagement on their content that is fake or that are bots. And so as we try to bring a good ROI or return on advertising spend for brands, we've had to create AI to kind of fight the AI. So there's some cases where you have creators that have a lot of comments or a lot of likes. And, our AI is now able to figure out, and it's hard for a human to distinguish because they look like real people. And then they're starting to act like real people. And our AI is able to see those nuances and those patterns to differentiate who's real versus who's fake. And so that's a way that, AI can be extremely helpful, where it can see the nuances and patterns that humans can get easily deceived with. To help, keep us on track. And when you have, brands spending tens of millions of dollars a year on creators, they want to make sure that budget is spent on the right creators and that they're paying the right amount. And in some platforms, every creator has a percentage of, fake engagement, but there are some creators out there that are truly playing it and paying to make it look like, their 1,000 comments are 100% real when they're really not. And a lot of brands, work with some of these creators. They expect to get a huge return or a lot of followers or make a splash or get sales. And then they get surprised that there's hardly any impact that happened. And it's because they weren't looking at all the data. They weren't looking at, all the structured or unstructured data and to really, validate how healthy the engagement of a creator, truly is. And so I think when it comes to misinformation, when it comes to ways that people can abuse this type of technology, when it comes to entertainment or when it comes to content, I'm an optimist that there's always going to be, wherever there's something that's potentially abusive or can be hurtful, there will always be a counterpart that's going to be helpful and to help, guide humans. And we have to remember, AI, I mean, like sometimes people like have these, crazy ideas of like what's going to happen with AI. And I think Elon Musk in some ways, in a bad way, has contributed to these ideas where, they talk about scare tactics of, of robots, taking over, et cetera. And I think probably he's joked about that, but there are a lot of people that are nervous of technology progressing. But I believe that the next wave of technology is taking very manual and archaic systems and figuring out how to make them turnkey and making them much more scalable. And where we can be focused on more big picture areas that require more and more attention, that are much more strategic. And so when we look at AI, we never think of it as just a machine taking over and owning the process or making sure everything happens. We love the term, and I think you would appreciate this, that we call collaborative AI, where you have human experts that come in that are work along the data and the AI to make sure that it's properly trained, that it understands the nuances of someone only a person could understand that's worked on a certain type of industry or type of business for 20 plus years, that has a lot of great data and a lot of great understanding of how things are supposed to work. And our whole goal is to just make sure that whether it's a creator or if it's a brand, that there's experts that help train the AI that just make it so people can be a lot more effective. They can do things much faster. They can scale much better, and make it so as a human you can be a lot more optimized. And so I think when people look at AI, you got to look at it as a technology that just truly optimizes humans to be able to elevate and to do more things.
It's not collaborative AI. It's augmented intelligence, and where the category comes from. Don't take away our category.
I love that you're trying to take something that is very popular in the AI world and own it. Sorry, my friend. There's a good variety of us making breakthroughs here. And you're calling it augmented intelligence. So that's your new way of saying collaborative AI. How creative.
Collaborative AI. Well, why keep the artificial term in there? Augmented intelligence feels more antagonistic towards artificial intelligence. So, no, I think we're... I did want to throw out to your audience that...
Why can't we call it something better? Why don't we call it the cyborg approach?
Cyborg feels...
Where it's human and
Black
technology, joining forces.
Yeah. That doesn't make you have any warm fuzzies when people think of cyborgs. But I did want to tell your audience, I have written 3 blogs on autonomous war. Mm-hmm. And so when you think about the future and AI having a negative impact, if we had a World War III, one of the things that did keep me up at night for a while until I started writing about it was the general public doesn't understand what would happen if we had World War III, because you'd have trillion-dollar war contracts. And the stuff that... If I decided to engage in that type of contract, the stuff I would put in there, I wanted people to understand the R&D that would be on the table. And so one of the things I unpack is this concept that Hollywood has not prepared us because they're not smart enough. They don't understand AI. And I'm educating the audience on what a hive mind is and how a human can't fight a hive mind. Because Terminator, the idea of you not being seen by these robots is laughable. They would be able to. You could hide in your fridge, and they would know where you were before they came to your home.
Man, Ben, going dark again. Let's end on a positive note, please.
Yeah, let's. So AI in healthcare are huge. I am a huge fan of maximizing the creative. I think every human has a creative streak. We just have to give them opportunities to exercise it. I'm curious what you think about that. Can every human be an artist to some extent? Obviously, you have great artists and great creators, but don't you think everyone has a little bit of a creative streak? Maybe they just don't have a chance to exercise it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think having all this decentralized content is empowering more individuals to be able to be a part of the artistic game, and I think having access to data and AI tools is going to make it so there can be even more self-expression and more people that can create more art. And whether it's something that's very niche or specialized or something that's going to, be appreciated on the mainstream, I think, the world where data and art, connects and combines, I really think AI is going to be a big part of that, and making it so there can be even more art, even better art out there that can, change the world in a positive way. I've talked about this before on the podcast where, art is very important because it preserves history, it preserves data, it preserves culture, and we learn from it, to progress. And now that we have more data and more art than ever before, I really hope this means that as humanity, we get better. We're more understanding. We have more empathy, and we learn, not to do things that are, contentious, but do things that are more unified. And so, I'm really excited about, this time that we're living in, because we're seeing the era of the artists where creators are truly becoming the ones empowered, and they are going to be, in the tens of millions, and they are going to have the power in their own, communities that the studios, once had.
Yeah. And when I know we're at time, but I did want to react to something quickly. You said that this concept of empathy, one of the things I'd love to challenge the creator community with that your audience is part of is, obviously they produce great content, they have a unique audience, the content loves them for it, they're engaged with it. But these creators have opportunities to be authentic. And when you're authentic about real world things, you being a human, insecurities, things you're going through, you don't know whose lives you can impact. So that's been a big part of my brand. So when I travel, I'll have coffee with someone I've never met, and they'll say, "You're the reason I quit my job a year ago." And initially that kind of scared me. Just really? Like, hopefully it was a good outcome, but you never know how you can impact people just by being a little bit authentic. Like, you don't always have to have your brand be 100% what you do. You can add hints of authenticity and really help a huge audience. So that there you go, Ricky. That's something optimistic at the end. You can, rather than the Black Mirror rabbit holes that I like stepping into.
Well, I think it'd be fun to have you on again, and we'll have you on with maybe other creators. And I love the idea of trying to discuss what's coming next, what's going to come in the future, specifically around entertainment. But Ben, it was a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much, for making time to be a part of this. This is a very different video than what you typically do. We don't ever really go this deep into technology and AI and data, but it is going to be a much bigger part of the creative process in the future. And it's really good, I think, for creators and brands to, start getting ready now to try to better understand and interpret unstructured data, and to make it a much bigger priority on how they can optimize and scale in that area. And AI, machine learning, deep learning is all, going to be a big part of that. And there's going to be a lot of tools that come out and, make sure that you're investigating and figuring out, what tools are out there that are going to be very helpful on helping you grow your content empire or your entertainment empire, in the future, that hopefully resonates and improves a lot of your viewers and consumers' lives. And so thank you so much again, Ben. And, this was a lot of fun geeking out, and hope to have you again. And everyone that's watching, please give this a like. If you have questions around AI, feel free to ask in the comments. Ben and myself can, both interact and connect with you and give you our thoughts and advice. And also, be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, Ben.